My experience with a hotel in the Nevada desert. A few days back, I was driving across the country. I go to college in California, but I got an internship with a company in New York that I had been working with for the summer. The internship ended 2 weeks before my semester started, so I decided to take a nice windy road trip across the country on my way back to California. I must have been in Nevada somewhere when it happened. I have an old convertible and was blasting music and driving fast, the late summer air whipping through my car. I had been driving for several hours though, so I was keeping an eye out for a place to stop and get a few hours of sleep. I pulled off the highway and drove along a road looking for a hotel. I'd been driving for almost 15 minutes along the road and had almost turned around when I came around a curve and saw a hotel. It looked like a traditional Mexican Pueblo hotel, that kind of architecture, you know? The kind of building that had a chapel built into it. The place looked very nice and very, very expensive. Still, I figured it'd be a nice change of pace from the crappy Airbnbs that I had been using. I pulled my car into the parking lot and walked into the building. I was surprised at how dark the inside of the hotel was. The only lights were coming from the welcome desk. A man stood behind the desk wearing a bright red vest. He gave me a smile that was almost too wide. "Hello, sir. How may I help you?" I asked him what it would cost me to get a room for the night. He gave a small nod and said, "Our standard rooms go for $30, but you can upgrade to our master suite for $75. I was more than a little surprised at that. This place looked like it could have been a resort. Nice marble floors, quality wood, the works. Still, I'm not one to pass up a good thing, so I asked for the master suite. "Of course, sir. Ms. Garcia will lead you to your rooms." A young Mexican woman stood in the door holding a candle that looked straight out of last century. She stood, framed by its flickering light. "I will show you to your rooms," she said in a flat, low voice. She led me down the hall, passing rooms on either side. The woman spoke a little above a whisper as she walked. "You have access to free room service at any time of the day or night with your master suite, sir. We can provide you with a wide selection of wines, foods, and desserts at no added cost. Please feel free to call at any time." We reached my room and she handed me an old wrought iron key. I almost laughed at it. Was this hotel some kind of reenactment of how old hotels used to be? I used the key on my door and stepped inside. My room was huge with a canopy bed and a balcony that overlooked the outside. "If you need anything from me, please just ring the bell," she said, pointing to a string attached to the wall. "Would you like anything while I'm here?" I thought for a moment, but shrugged. "Sure, I'll take a glass of wine. What have you got?" "There is an excellent chateau that I would recommend. Would that suffice?" Yeah, that'd be great," I said. She disappeared, returning in a moment with a tall glass. I took it and thanked her, and she disappeared back down the darkened hallway. The wine was delicious, by far the best I'd ever had. I didn't know what to think about this hotel, but I figured I'd just lucked out. Soon, I was fast asleep on my bed. It was several hours later when I was awoken by the voices. It sounded like they were coming from outside my door. It was hard to make out, but they were definitely singing. I only caught a few words, but I remember lovely, room, and time of year. There were dozens of voices. As soon as I gathered my wits, my reaction was to walk over to the wall and pull the bell. The bell tinkled softly in the night, and the voices stopped immediately. Within 30 seconds, I heard a knock on the door. I approached it slowly, not knowing what to expect. My heart was pounding, and I cursed myself for leaving my pocket knife in my car. I pulled the door open to see the small Mexican woman from earlier. "How can I be of service, sir?" she asked. What were those voices I heard just now?" I asked. Her eyes were emotionless. "Our guests," she said. Right, I said. Well, why don't you bring me another bottle of that wine from earlier? Which wine was that, sir? The Chateau. I think that's what you said. You'll have to see our front desk about that. I'm afraid we don't carry that brand of wine here. Good night, sir. She strode off into the night. I shut the door for a moment, thinking hard. This place was giving me a seriously bad vibe, and I wanted out. I grabbed my backpack and made my way down the dark hallway towards the front room. The same man from before stood behind the desk. How can I help you, sir? I didn't want to talk to him, but I felt obligated to make the conversation as I made my way towards the exit. I was served a glass of Chateau wine before bed, but then was told you don't serve it here, so I think I'm just going to be leaving now. I turned towards the door and pushed. Instead of the glass and painted wood of the door, my hand felt the stucco of the wall. I realized that the old wooden door I had walked through to enter was no longer there. I'm sorry to hear we couldn't serve your taste, sir. You see, we haven't carried that brand of wine here for close to 3 decades. You must have been mistaken. I turned around, confused. I must have gotten turned around. But no, this was the room. I scanned the walls, looking for the door, and saw nothing. Gotcha. I must be a little confused. Where is the exit to this building? My eyes returned to his face, his smile unnaturally wide, stretching almost to his ears. His teeth were too long. His hands were splayed on the counter. Am I to understand you wished to check out, sir? He asked. My mouth was dry, but I managed a nod. The clerk shook his head savagely. You may check out any time you'd like, sir, but you can never leave. My body flooded with adrenaline, and I did the only thing that came to mind. I ran back down the hallway towards my room, slamming and locking the door behind me. I tried my phone, but had no service. I sat in the room for hours and hours. When I finally worked up the courage to try the door, I found it locked tight. My key did nothing. As the hours passed, my phone ran out of battery. 12 hours must have gone by, but it was still dark outside. I was exhausted. Finally, I gave into my body's demand and fell onto the bed, falling asleep almost immediately. I woke up to the feeling of sunlight on my face. I coughed and sat up, covered in dust. I looked around and saw I was in the middle of what looked like an abandoned building. Wait, it wasn't just any abandoned building. I was still in my room, just a version of my room that had been left to rot for a few decades. I jumped to my feet and tried the door. It had rusted, but swung open after a few kicks. The entire hotel looked like it had been abandoned, the same as my room. The lobby was the same, but I breathed a sigh of relief when I saw the desk was empty, and an even bigger sigh when I saw the door was there. My car was sitting outside, same as it had been the night before. I hopped into it and drove away. If you want my advice, never stop by random hotels while on your way to California.